Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are wrestling with a problem that touches nearly half of all working Canadians. But it's one of those things that's often invisible until, you're trapped right in the middle of it. We're talking about legal access, specifically civil and family justice, the kind of law that dictates your mortgage, your custody agreement, your debt disputes, all the real-life stuff.
Stuff that keeps life running, or not.
Exactly. And I want you to just stop and think for a second. If you woke up tomorrow with a serious, unexpected dispute, maybe a really nasty landlord issue or a complicated will update because of a new family situation.
Or a debt collector calling nonstop.
Yes, that. How much would you expect to pay out of pocket to resolve that? And maybe more importantly, would you even know who to call?
That confusion and that overwhelming and often sudden cost is precisely where we're going to focus today. We are taking an in-depth exploration of what's widely known as the justice gap in Canada. And this isn't about, say, the criminal defense system. That has its own public structures. This is about the civil and family law system.
The gears of your life, like you said.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is to analyze the source material you provided, which defines this really significant barrier and then proposes an innovative large-scale solution. We're talking about the prepaid legal service model, specifically looking at LegalShield's implementation in Canada.
So we need to understand the failures of the old system first, the why behind the high costs.
Precisely, and then see how a technology-enabled, subscription-based approach tries to fundamentally solve those issues for the everyday person.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The sources, they paint a pretty bleak but really crucial picture of Canadian civil and family justice. The consensus seems to be that the system is, and I'm quoting here, too complex, slow, and expensive.
It's a triple threat.
It is. And each one of those things makes the others worse. So our goal here is to extract the nuts and bolts of both the problem and the proposed fix, so you walk away not just informed, but with the context to really grasp what's happening.
Let's start with a formal definition just to get us on the same page. The justice gap. It's the critical and frankly pervasive disparity between the public's real need for legal services.
The everyday life problems.
Yes, exactly. The problems that require professional advice and their actual ability to afford or even access those services. It's essentially a financial and informational canyon separating the average citizen from help.
And the roots of this gap, according to the sources, they're not just accidental. They're deeply embedded in systemic issues within the Canadian civil and family justice system itself.
They're institutional. And while everyone focuses on the expensive part, the complexity is often the root cause that drives everything else. Well, because complexity requires specialization. And specialization requires a huge amount of professional time just to navigate the basic procedural hurdles, the paperwork, the different provincial rules, and all that time, well, that equals billable hours.
Of course.
So when the system is just opaque and layered, the average person who's facing a legal document for the first time...
Like a notice of garnishment or something?
Exactly. They just don't stand a chance without professional help. And if you need that help for even basic navigation, the cost just, it skyrockets.
And that leads us straight to the sticker shock. This is where the numbers get, well, staggering. The sources highlight one figure that really just stops you in your tracks.
Yep.
The average adult with a legal issue may spend around $6,100 to resolve it.
$6,100 for what's being called a typical issue.
It's unbelievable.
And that average cost is a massive barrier to entry for something as common as a dispute over a property line, a consumer complaint, or a lease agreement review. We're not talking about huge corporate lawsuits here.
No, we're talking about life-altering personal issues. So let's drill down on that $6,100 figure. Where does that money actually go? Because to the average person, that sounds like a down payment on a car, not the cost of a simple dispute.
And it buys far less than people imagine. That figure often just represents the cost of the initial steps of resolution under the traditional hourly model.
So not even the whole thing?
Not always. Think of it this way. A lawyer needs a retainer. That's often $2,000, $3,000, maybe $4,000 upfront just to open the file.
Yeah.
Then the clock starts ticking. That $6,000 covers time spent on things like the initial consultation and strategy, which can be several hours right there.
Just to explain your problem.
Right. Then there's procedural complexity. Drafting, filing, and serving the initial paperwork. Filing fees alone can be hundreds of dollars, plus the cost of the lawyer's time to review everything.
And all the back and forth communication, the emails, the phone calls.
All billable, usually in 6-minute increments. And if it involves any kind of formal litigation, the time spent gathering and reviewing documents, what we call discovery, that can eat up thousands of dollars very, very quickly.
So the 6,100 is often the price of just not giving up in the early stages.
That's a great way to put it. And now contrast that with what most working families are prepared for. Most people don't have a contingency fund of that size just sitting there for a sudden debt dispute or a question about a severance package.
No, of course not. The cost alone just disqualifies a huge segment of the population from getting help in the first place.
Which brings us to the next structural problem. If you can't afford that, what are your options? We usually think of legal aid.
Right, the publicly funded option.
But this is where we run smack into the problem of the missing middle.
Explain that.
Legal aid in Canada, while it's absolutely vital, it's typically restricted to those with the very lowest incomes. It has extremely strict qualifying requirements.
So if you have a decent job, a car, maybe a little bit of equity in a home,
You're almost immediately disqualified, even if that job doesn't give you enough disposable income to just absorb a massive, unexpected legal bill.
so let's visualize this missing middle. These are our neighbors, our colleagues, the vast majority of working Canadians.
That's it.
They earn too much for aid, but they are fundamentally unable to realistically afford traditional hourly rates, especially when the average resolution cost is over $6,000.
They're financially stable enough to be ineligible for help, but not wealthy enough to afford the private legal market. It's a profound market failure.
And the sources are pretty clear about the implications, right? They're forced to choose.
Yes. They might just abandon a claim entirely, even a totally valid one like disputing an unfair debt. Or worse, they try to represent themselves.
Going up against trained professionals, I can't imagine.
The outcomes are usually predictable and not good.
It's a cruel bind. You're forced to choose between pursuing critical legal help, maybe something that could save your family's financial future, and, keeping up with your mortgage or putting food on the table.
So the legal issue often gets dropped or just handled poorly. They're effectively priced out of justice.
Not because they're unwilling to pay, but because the model is just fundamentally inaccessible.
And an unresolved legal issue, it doesn't just disappear. A debt dispute that turns into a wage garnishment, or a badly handled family matter that leads to ongoing conflict. It creates deeper, more expensive problems down the line. It's a systemic filter.
Okay, so the financial wall is huge, but it's not the only one. Once you're priced out, where do you go for simple, trusted information? The sources also point to a huge information deficit.
Yes. People improvise, and that improvisation can create even more problems. They turn to unreliable sources because they're just intimidated by the whole process.
So people are basically, Googling their legal rights?
They are. They're turning to aggressive, often generalized internet searches, relying on things like legal self-help forums or asking well-meaning but legally unqualified friends and family for advice.
That sounds profoundly dangerous. You wouldn't diagnose a serious illness based on a few web searches and a chat with a neighbor.
But that's the exact informational equivalent we're forcing people into when they're faced with losing their house or custody of their kids. They're performing legal triage on themselves.
And what's fascinating here is that the problem isn't just a lack of money, but a lack of knowledge about where to even start.
Exactly. That discourages people from seeking help early. They don't know if their issue is serious enough to warrant professional help. They fear the initial consultation fee, which might be $300, just to be told their problem is too small.
Right.
And they are intimidated by the law firm environment itself. So what happens? They delay. And by the time they finally contact a professional, the issue has often become exponentially more complex and, of course, far more expensive to solve.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It reinforces the idea that the whole system is unaffordable.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, we have to add the geographic and accessibility issues. The justice gap gets so much worse depending on where you live.
You mean rural populations?
Exactly. The sources detail how rural populations face a chronic shortage of available lawyers. If you live in Toronto or Vancouver, you have a ton of options. But in smaller towns and remote communities, the local bar might be aging, overburdened, or just non-existent for certain specialties.
And Canada is a massive country. For a lot of people, the closest lawyer is a pretty significant drive away.
A 3 or 4 hour drive in some cases. Access is effectively denied even if you could afford the hourly rate. The cost of travel, the time off work for just one meeting, The traditional face-to-face service model is totally insufficient.
It's an urban-centric model.
Fundamentally. So the idea of just walking into a local lawyer's office, it breaks down for a huge part of the country.
So we have these financial barriers, these informational barriers, and now these geographical barriers, all converging to create a crisis. And when you put it all together, the scope of the impact is, well, it's chilling. The sources present this statistic that about 50% of Canadians who experience a civil or administrative legal problem fall into one or more dimensions of the justice gap.
50%, half the population.
Half the population is effectively operating without proper legal backing when they need it most. That's not a niche problem. That is a foundational societal challenge.
It's a staggering number. And the consequences, as the source material details, are severe. This leads directly to unresolved issues, which in turn cause significant financial hardship, stress, and chronic debt.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just an individual tragedy.
No, the consequences ripple outward. Unresolved debt matters affect the national credit market. Poorly handled family disputes strain social services. Housing disputes contribute to eviction rates. The justice gap is a collective economic and social drain.
So any solution has to be fundamentally disruptive, not just an incremental fix.
It has to be.
This brings us, thankfully, to the potential solution presented in our source material. Enter LegalShield, or PPLSI, a company marketing prepaid, subscription-based legal service plans. This is their counter-proposal to the whole mess we've just described.
Yes. And the core promise is compelling. It's offering access to legal consultation and support for an unlimited number of personal legal matters at a fixed, low monthly cost.
So it's an attempt to turn a high-stakes, crisis-driven, unpredictable transaction into something more like an affordable, routine monthly utility.
That's the idea, like your phone bill.
Okay, let's break down that fundamental shift. The subscription model versus traditional hourly billing. The old model is entirely reactive. A crisis happens, you find a lawyer, you pay a terrifying retainer, and you watch the clock.
But the LegalShield model emphasizes being proactive. And that's the immense power of the affordable monthly plan. It completely changes the cost calculation.
So it encourages people to seek help before a small issue becomes a crisis.
Precisely. It's like preventative legal health care. Want to check the wording on a new lease before you sign it? You consult. Got a warranty issue that feels off? You consult. Because the fee is fixed and the access is unlimited for covered personal matters, the financial disincentive to seek early advice just vanishes.
And that solves the informational deficit, too. If you know you won't get a surprise bill, you're much more likely to pick up the phone.
And ask a simple question that might prevent that $6,000 crisis later on.
Okay, but that promise of unlimited consultation, it sounds almost too good to be true, you know? Given the traditional economics of law, if I'm paying a small monthly fee, how does the lawyer or the firm actually make money?
That's a fair and critical question. And the answer is about both scale and specialization. First, LegalShield isn't promising unlimited trial defense or a messy contested divorce. Their unlimited model applies to consultation, advice, document review, and preventative action, the things that handle, say, 80% of the missing middle's needs. The source material is clear that major litigation or complex adversarial court cases are not part of the core unlimited plan.
So those services are still available?
They are, but at discounted hourly rates for members. The core value, though, is prophylactic. It's preventative.
And the second part, the scale.
The system makes money for the firms through volume and efficiency. By structuring service delivery through technology and centralizing the intake process, the firm dramatically reduces its administrative overhead. The lawyer is spending their time giving advice, not chasing paperwork or billing clients.
So it's an economy of scale applied to legal services.
That's it. The subscription model guarantees a continuous, predictable revenue stream for the participating law firms.
And the covered services, even in the basic structure, are pretty broad. Things like legal advice, document review, help with debt collection. This is targeting exactly those high-volume issues.
Exactly. And to solve the geographic issue we talked about, they rely on their structure, the dedicated network of lawyers. They connect clients with a network of firms across Canada and the U.S.
So members are assigned a dedicated full-service provider law firm in their province or state. I'm curious, though, if I'm in a small town in Alberta, is the lawyer I speak to really familiar with my provincial laws? Or is it just general advice?
That's a crucial distinction, and the model specifically addresses it. The source material emphasizes that members are assigned to a firm in their province.
Okay, that's key.
It means the lawyer is licensed and operating within the specific legal jurisdiction of the client, ensuring the advice is tailored to local statutes and rules, whether it's Quebec's distinct civil code or Alberta's tenancy regulations.
So it centralizes the technology but keeps the legal advice local and specific.
Right. It transforms the service from a scarce local resource into a networked distributed utility, accessible instantly, regardless of physical distance.
And beyond the service itself, the sources also point to the company's role in wider advocacy. They host conferences like Elevate by LegalShield to discuss ways to eliminate this justice gap.
And that advocacy part is critical. It signals a long-term commitment to systemic change. This model isn't just selling a product, it's trying to shift cultural expectations within the legal field.
Forcing the established players to look at their own accessibility problems.
Yes, which raises a really important question. Is this model positioned to truly make legal assistance a right rather than a privilege? By changing the delivery and the pricing, they are directly challenging the old assumption that legal advice has to be prohibitively expensive.
It's the difference between asking, can I afford this one-time catastrophic intervention?
And do I have continuous access to legal advice for my life? It's a total paradigm shift.
So let's get into the mechanics of how it's delivered, because the technology is really the engine driving all of this. The sources really emphasize the delivery mechanism, the LegalShield mobile app, which is described as placing a law firm in the palm of every member's hand.
This is where that term constructive disruption really applies. The app and the network, they constructively disrupt the barriers. And think about what the app replaces. The stress of finding the right lawyer, the nightmare of initial intake, scheduling an appointment weeks out.
And the fear of the hourly clock ticking.
All of that friction is just eliminated.
And the tech has to work on two levels, right? It has to be easy for the client, but it also has to be efficient for the lawyer to keep that price point low. How does the app do that?
It streamlines the entire non-billable process. In a traditional firm, so many hours are spent on client intake forms, scheduling, document retrieval. The LegalShield app acts as a highly efficient triage and routing system.
So you can upload your documents, your ticket, your contract right through the app.
Exactly. You upload everything before the lawyer even takes the call. This huge reduction in administrative time is the secret sauce that makes the fixed fee structure viable for the law firm. The lawyer gets to jump straight into providing high-value consultation.
And the sources say that with the touch of one button, a member can speak with a lawyer on any issue. That immediacy is a direct counter to the hassle of appointments that defines the old system.
That immediacy is empowering. Imagine getting a 24-hour notice to enter your apartment that you think is invalid, or a debt collector calls you at 7 p.m.
Yeah, high-stress moments.
Very. And you need immediate, accurate verification, not a week-long wait for an appointment. The one-button access lets you intervene legally at the exact moment of pressure.
And this is all available for a low monthly fee on an unlimited number of personal legal issues. Let's break down the core services.
Okay. First, the fundamental service, receiving advice and consultation. You get to talk through your problem. Second, and this is often so helpful in early stages if necessary, a letter or a phone call will be made by your lawyer on your behalf.
That professional letter or call is huge. I mean, the difference between a quick letter on a lawyer's letterhead versus filing a lawsuit could be the difference between a minor annoyance and that $6,100 catastrophe.
Absolutely. It instantly elevates the seriousness of the situation for the other party. The third core service is document reviews,
which is probably the most valuable preventative action there is. Reviewing a contract or a severance agreement before you sign it.
potentially saving you tens of thousands of dollars. And finally, there's the critical safety net, 24/7 emergency legal access for covered situations, like being detained.
And to make it even more concrete, the sources call out some of the most common services people use, like preparing a last will and testament.
Which is a basic foundational document every adult should have.
But so many people put it off because of the cost and complexity.
Right. This plan often includes the creation of a standard will, all included in the subscription. It de-risks a crucial responsibility. And the other one they mention is speeding ticket protection.
A perfect example of a high-volume, low-complexity issue where the cost of a lawyer often outweighs the fine.
Unless you have a predictable fixed-cost model, And what's fascinating is the sheer scope of coverage. This isn't just for simple contracts. The sources provide a really extensive list of matters showing they cover a vast range, whether they seem traumatic or trivial.
Let's dive into that list because
Mhm.
it shows the versatility, it covers major life events, but also the daily nuisances that create so much stress.
It does. It covers things like adoption, advice on child custody proceedings, estate planning, and various family matters. But notice the specification: uncontested separation and uncontested divorce.
Okay, that's an important detail. Why is the uncontested distinction so critical for cost savings?
Because even when a separation is amicable uncontested, it's still incredibly procedure heavy.
Mm.
You need precise legal drafting of agreements, financial disclosures, complex court filings,
And traditionally, that still costs thousands, even if you agree on everything.
billed at hundreds of dollars an hour, yes. By covering the procedural work for uncontested matters, the subscription model de-risks the high administrative cost for the family matters that affect most people.
So they handle the paperwork for the amicable splits, but if it gets adversarial, that's when it moves to the member discount rate.
Precisely. It's a clear line. And the coverage extends to those daily friction points: moving traffic violations, property damage assistance, and critical help with landlord-tenant matters.
Which is huge for renters.
Huge. Plus consumer protection issues, debt collection calls, even advice related to taxes.
So it's this dual coverage. Help for the big, potentially catastrophic issues like civil litigation, but also easy access, the small things that cause immense daily stress.
The list is extensive because the intent is comprehensive access. It includes auto accidents, real estate advice for non-transactional questions, and even trial defense if you're named in a civil suit with specific parameters.
So by offering this unlimited access for all these issues, the model is essentially making legal consultation a fixed cost utility.
Instead of a catastrophic variable expense. And that brings us back to the value of timeliness. Having that dedicated firm on hand lets members make informed decisions quickly and easily.
And that speed is what helps prevent that $6,100 average cost in the first place.
Absolutely. Think about quick guidance. Should I accept the settlement offer from the insurance company? Is this warranty legally binding? Without a fixed cost service, most people would skip the consultation entirely, trust to luck, and potentially expose themselves to huge costs later.
It changes the entire cost-benefit calculation.
It encourages proactive use of the legal system rather than reactive panic. It shifts legal advice from being an ambulance service showing up after the crash to being preventative maintenance.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, grappling with all this? Let's just quickly synthesize our findings.
Okay.
We've established a core systemic problem. Canada's civil justice system is too expensive, slow, and complex. This creates a massive justice gap that traps the missing middle. We highlighted that staggering financial barrier, the $6,100 average cost to resolve an issue, and the consequence. 50% of Canadians fall into this gap.
And we synthesized how the subscription model tries to solve this by leveraging technology and scale. It transforms the legal relationship by providing unlimited advice and preventative action through a network of specialized law firms, all accessible through a mobile app.
So it replaces high, unpredictable hourly fees, which create fear and delay.
With a low, predictable monthly payment, making professional guidance proactive, affordable, and immediate. The structural impact is significant. It's fundamentally disruptive to a system that has historically benefited from its complexity.
The move from transactional, crisis-driven fees to continuous, affordable access changes everything.
It makes legal guidance routine rather than exceptional. For the missing middle, this model represents perhaps the only scalable way to truly address those financial, informational, and geographical deficits.
It definitely provides a path forward. We've seen how technology can put a law firm in your hand to handle everything from speeding tickets and wills to debt collection and uncontested family matters.
It's quite a shift.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. If a high-cost, complex professional service, like legal consultation, can be successfully transformed by a low-cost, unlimited subscription model, what other traditional high-cost services could be next?
Interesting.
Could complex accounting, specialized tax advice for small business owners, or even certain areas of routine medical advice be similarly transformed by a fixed-fee, high-volume subscription model enabled by technology? That's something for you to mull over as we close the books on this deep dive.
Thank you for joining us as we explored this critical intersection of law, finance, and technology.
Until next time.